Thank you. Gentlemen, thank you. I apologize. I've had another committee hearing going on at the same time, but I appreciate your written comments and the conversation today is so important. As somebody who was the Attorney General of the state of Nevada and worked on consumer protection issues, obviously weeding out any type of fraud is important in this space as well. So let me, though, start with a couple of questions that I have. I understand that companies that originated outside the cryptocurrency space, like Kodak and Burger King, have recently jumped into the cryptocurrency space. However, some critics have warned that companies are using blockchain as an opportunistic venture to pump up stock prices without having a clear business plan. One company, Long Island Iced Tea, I understand, changed its name to Long Blockchain and watched its stock soar. So are you concerned that companies may be utilizing blockchain as a scheme to pump up their stock prices? And I'm going to just open it up to both of you.
The short answer is yes. The longer answer is I've put out a warning in this space, I've put out a warning to securities lawyers as well, which is nobody should think it's okay to change your name to something that involves blockchain when you have no real underlying blockchain business plan and try to sell securities based on the hype around blockchain.
And when you say you put out a warning, what does that mean specifically?
We put out published it's on the SEC website. I made a speech regarding this, but this is an area of concern to us. Anytime there's something new that people seek to raise the value of their securities without the underlying goods being there,
right,
is problematic.
Thank you, Senator. So as you know, the jurisdiction of the CFTC and the SEC is slightly different in this regard, and so Chairman Clayton is rightfully concerned with initial coin offerings that are misrepresenting the affiliation, whether it be with Kodak or otherwise. We focus on fraud and manipulation broadly in instruments where there is wild claims for them. And I mentioned earlier a case we recently brought again on a Long Island firm called My Big Coin, which turned out to be My Big Con. There was nothing there. They were taking people's money and not investing in anything other than their own jewelry and houses and fancy cars and this kind of thing. We've been very aggressive in using our enforcement authority. We've recently brought 3 cases just last month alone. I've said there will be more, and we are looking into this and monitoring markets very carefully. We believe that our big task is bringing enforcement cases and letting people see that, as well as consumer education, which I've also
yeah, because it has a deterrent effect. You hope it does, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. It's also been reported that more than 3 million Bitcoins have been stolen. That is about 14% of the Bitcoins, or 1 in 7 Bitcoins stolen. And on January 26, CoinCheck, a Japanese currency exchange, was hacked. In minutes, 430 million was lost to hackers. This follows another theft of more than 500 million from another exchange, Mt. Gox. If people put money into a stock or bond and it was stolen, they would have help. For example, the federal government is still trying to help investors recover the money stolen by Bernie Madoff. When virtual currencies are stolen by hackers, what can buyers do to get their money back, if anything?
This is a very good point, and it's one that we've emphasized in our investor alerts, that when you engage in investing online with an offshore entity, the chances that we can do anything practical to get your money back are very, very low.
In our futures market, for example, we have what we call system safeguards, requirements that futures exchanges have cyber protections in place, and they adopt best practices. For these underlying spot markets, which we don't regulate, we don't have the authority to require them to have cyber safeguards in place.
Right.
And a lot of these companies are young, they're startups, they're focused on putting what resources they have into developing their technology. And in the case of some of the cases you mentioned, what I understand was the cyber protections just weren't there. Now, I know that the JFSA has been aggressive on this. We've had some conversations with them. We've asked questions, what are they doing about it? But unfortunately, the theft has already happened.
Right.
And so this is a problem. These underlying exchanges, while we do have enforcement authority, we don't have the same regulatory authority that we have in the markets that we oversee. That's our day job, as one of your colleagues mentioned earlier. And so therefore, this is a gap.
Or the same kind of protection rules like custody.
Right.
It was gone.
Yeah, so it's the old axiom, buyer beware. I mean, so around this space, a lot of education is important. I would imagine from all of the federal agencies to buyers so they know until something else can be done, which I think we're still trying to figure that out. I notice my time is up. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I had not planned on having a second round, but I have agreed to allow Senator Shelby and Senator Warren to each have one brief question. Senator Shelby.
I want to get in the area of what's on a lot of people's minds today, and I know you don't control it, the stock market. You know, what goes up comes down, as we all know, and we don't know when and so forth. Is this perhaps more than an ordinary correction, or do you have a judgment on that at all? Chairman.
So
Clayton.
your question is exactly the question I asked my staff and some of my colleagues
Okay.
across the federal government, because we should be asking those questions. By this morning, there was nothing to indicate that any of our systems didn't function as they were expected to function yesterday. This was the largest volume since November 2016. There was a significant price change, but it was not a price. We have two types of limits. We have single stock limits, and then we have market limits, the circuit breakers. Neither one of those were hit in any great detail. The single stock was 9. The circuit breakers didn't get hit. So as I sit here today, there's nothing that came out of this that concerns me from a functioning standpoint. But days like yesterday, our job is to look at them.
From a regulatory standpoint, are you saying that you don't see anything amiss?
Yes.
From a regulatory standpoint?
Yes.
You can't control what goes up and goes down. But what spooked the markets? Is it profit taking, perhaps? Is it a whiff of maybe inflation out there because people that watch the markets and participate in the markets see that the Fed is beginning to raise interest rates, dealing with price stability as they see it. And the Fed has information perhaps we don't have. The economy's hot, unemployment's low, so forth. There's a combination of all, or can we really say?
Well, I can't really say, because there are a lot of opinions on those things. Our job is to look at the functioning,
Absolutely.
and look at the systemic risks.
That's right.
And I'm asking myself, is there anything that happened yesterday that gives me a different view of systemic risk than I had the day before? And so far, no. But that's a question I ask myself almost every day.
Of course, we all know that when the market is going up, people are elated. That's natural. Mm-hmm. When it's going down, some people profit, but not a lot of people are elated. Is that fair?
Fair.
Do you have any comment, Mr. Chairman?
I'm just smiling because just a recollection of a saying that a mentor of mine, who actually was my introduction into the financial markets, used to say. When I would ask him, he was an old hand in the markets, what drove the market up yesterday or down, he'd say, oh, it was up, oh, more people bought than sold. Oh, it was down, more people sold than bought. And we laughed, but what he said to me, he said, you know, when you listen to the pundits and they say, well, the market was up yesterday because of this, that may have been why or may have not been why, but the reporters or the pundit needed a reason. So they pick something out, and that becomes the reason for the day. And I don't mean to be facetious, but markets are very, very complex, very, very complex.
Very much.
And sometimes it's oversimplifying, and you hear it on the news, you hear it by people that are stock pickers, and they say, well, it was because of this. Well, I don't know how anybody really knows. Now, if there are fundamental moves, fundamental changes, that's where we have to do. And I share Chairman Clayton's view is Our job is to look at the structural
Absolutely.
underpinnings and see whether there's anything that's not functioning.
See if the fundamentals are sound.
See if the fundamentals sound. So you won't be surprised to know that we had a late night last night and early morning this morning, checking in with our exchanges to make sure that things are in order, making sure that the margin levels held, to make sure there was no significant margin breaches. And I can say that the system held. The system worked as it was designed to do. The margin levels worked as they were designed to work. And so the right systems, the right policies are in place. But the markets are always evolving, always organic, and that's why we need to stay very close to them.
The market always corrects. The question is this ordinary, maybe not an ordinary correction, but is it a correction the market will correct itself, and we go from there? Is that fair?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I want to go back to virtual currency, and I want to ask about initial coin offerings, ICOs. Some ICOs raise money for legitimate companies, but others we know are just Ponzi schemes. And many of the investors in ICOs are just everyday Americans, lured by aggressive marketing promising very high returns. In fact, it is now so bad that Facebook recently banned all ads for virtual currency-related products and ICOs because there were so many, quote, deceptive and misleading advertising that targeted regular consumers. So I just want to ask a little bit of question around how we make ICOs safer. Chairman Clayton, the SEC evidently recognized the risk, so it announced last summer that it would consider certain coins to be securities under the Securities Act, meaning that they have to be registered with the Commission and comply with disclosure requirements. In 2017, companies raised more than $4 billion in ICOs. How many of those companies registered their ICO with the SEC?
Not one.
Not one. And as of today, how many companies have registered for upcoming ICOs?
Not one.
Not one. So we're still at zero. Can you just say a word about why that's so?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think the gatekeepers that we rely on to assist us in making sure our securities laws are followed have done their job. We've made it clear what the law is. As I've said many times, there are thousands and thousands of private placements that go on every year in the U.S. We want them to go on. We want people to raise capital, but we want them to do it right.
Right.
What ICOs do is they take the disclosure light benefits of a private placement and then add to it the public general solicitation and retail investor promise of a secondary market without registering with us. And folks somehow got comfortable that this was new and it was okay and it was not a security, it was just some other way to raise money. Well, I disagree with them.
So it is not new, it is new, but it is not okay and it is not another way to raise money.
Correct.
I am understanding you to say it is a violation of the law.
Yes.
You know, registration really matters. When companies don't register their tokens as securities, they can hide information, and the SEC does not have the information it needs to monitor this market.
I am perfectly happy for these people to do private placements, but do them right. Don't try and do it as a private placement, but get all the benefits of a public
And then
offering.
lever over into a public
and do all
offering.
the other shenanigans that are.
Well, good. So should I take today as you're sounding a warning bell for people? Maybe they better pay a little closer attention to the law, or the SEC is going to pay closer attention to them?
Yes, and it's not the first time, but I really appreciate the opportunity to do it today.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. And thank you to our witnesses. We appreciate not only your testimony today, but the work that you are doing in this critical area. I would ask you to get back to me on recommendations as you refine your evaluation of our current financial legislative system and whether we need to provide further clarification from Congress. And with that, this hearing is adjourned. Thank you.